Hey guys, T-Bull here. Today Wargaming kind of announced something that was kind of expected somewhere in the future, but not necessarily this early. But they are introducing the American Light Cruiser Tech Tree Split. So we'll go through what that means exactly. We'll talk about commanders, and then I want to get some feedback from you guys. Let me know what you're thinking in the comments. But this game, I got a game in the Boise. It's just going to be kind of stock footage. Not a bad game, but not a barn burner by any means. But basically how it's going to work is if you go to the American Light Cruiser section, you're going to have your Phoenix, your Omaha, and then there's going to be two separate branches. The one we currently have is the Heavy Cruiser branch. That'll be comprised of Pensacola, New Orleans, and then culminating with the Baltimore Tier 7. And then there's going to be another split. There's going to be Dallas at Tier 5, Helena at Tier 6, and Cleveland at Tier 7. So as far as I know, how it'll work is once you grind out the Omaha, get all the XP you need to get that ship, then you're going to be able to get both the Dallas and the Pensacola from there. So it's going to be, a few more ships in the game. Different role, though. They're going to be... the light cruisers, they're going to be more HE focused. The American cruisers that we have currently, the heavy cruisers, really solid AP. The HE is not as good. So the preference for the heavy cruisers currently is to try and use the AP whenever you possibly can. This is probably going to be the opposite. Right, primarily going to be firing HE shells, but there'll be certain situations that the AP will be working better. And of course, we're going to cover these ships more once they actually come out, and we'll talk about strategy more in depth. But that'll be interesting. Now, the implications for this are, one of them being, you're going to have two kind of distinct play styles contained within the American cruiser universe. And that generally is going to want you to have two different builds. Again, if you're building a commander system for the heavy cruisers, you might want some AP focused type perks, HE perhaps for the light cruisers, or you might want some more maneuverability, or there's plenty of different options on how you're going to want to set them up. But I think a lot of people right now with their American cruisers have Norm Scott. He's kind of a jack of all trades commander. He's a really interesting commander in that he's not strictly in the defensive or the offensive paradigm that most nations' cruiser commanders fall into. He's got elements of both, so he's pretty versatile. Theoretically, you could use him for both. The problem with that is you can switch the right-hand perks, the commander's actual perks, back and forth quite easily without any sort of penalty. But changing the inspirations costs commander XP, and if you're doing that every time you're switching which ship you're playing, that adds up very quickly. That's going to stifle your progress. So probably what you're going to want to do is start thinking about setting up a second commander for the American cruisers, assuming that you're interested in these line of ships. Now, I was actually looking at these commanders just last night prior to hearing about this news, but thinking maybe we need to get Kincaid in the mix. Now, if you were around for the Halloween event and you purchased Einstein, then you'll have a third option. Currently, my thinking is, I have Norm Scott on like the Boise, the Atlanta, the light cruisers that we have currently, and so it's a pretty easy transition to continue to use him for someone who's got that set up for these new ships. And then Einstein I got set up for the heavy cruisers. You can get some AP focus, but potentially, I think the Cleveland on PC has radar. And of course, the Baltimore has radar, the Indianapolis has radar. There's a few American cruisers that have radar, and you could potentially even get a third build in the mix, kind of specking one for the ships that have radar, if you have all three commanders. And of course, in the future, there might even be more commanders. We never know. But there's a lot of different options. My advice, though, is generally it's a lot easier to just kind of set up one commander for, a sort of subset of ships that you're playing. And for most nations, like, let's say, if you're going to use Makawa for all the Japanese cruisers, that works pretty well right now. But American light cruisers, American heavy cruisers, the playstyle is going to be different enough that I would seriously consider bringing Kincaid into the fold if you haven't put any points in him yet and you don't have Einstein, the kind of event Halloween commander. So there's going to be some consideration to go into your commander build. And of course, for legendaries, right now we have the Alaska coming. That's kind of a battle cruiser. Doesn't really fit a paradigm. I think that might even be a premium ship on the PC, but we potentially could get the Des Moines as the heavy cruiser for Americans. That's the tier 10 on PC. And then the Worcester, I think. I don't know how people in Boston would say that one, but there's another light cruiser tier 10. And, we're probably going to see these ships at some point as well. So there's, it's going to influence how you're going to want to be using these resources, I guess is my point. Now, in my opinion, none of the American cruisers, at least the ones that we have in the game, really do that great at range. For the heavy cruisers, the AP kind of drops off. I mean, the penetration stuff remains pretty well at range, but because of the floatiness of the shells, the accuracy goes down. Less effective. So I don't really spec out my heavy cruisers for range. I do have range included on the light cruisers, though. Yeah, they're still kind of hard to hit at range, but due to the fact that for the light cruisers you're going to kind of want to be utilizing cover and hopefully having some people on your team spotting for you, getting that extra range will allow you to utilize those islands a little more effectively, give you more options where you can want to post up, and then they tend to have pretty good concealment as well, so you can kind of get into these positions, go from island to island, kind of an island hopping type of a strategy, and make it work from there. So this will be more, quote unquote HE spamming type of ships. We'll see if there's any sort of command, like another event commander that has some sort of IFHE type perk that the Russian cruisers have, because that gives them a distinct advantage. That perk increases the penetration on those shells, allows the shells to do more damage upon contact. Right now, the light cruisers on the American lines we have tend to rely on fire damage a lot because they're not getting a lot of great penetration on these shells unless you're really hitting superstructures that aren't angled too severely. So there's going to be some philosophical, ways to approach these ships. You're going to kind of want to enhance the fire chance as much as possible. And of course, this is going to kind of come down to what commanders you're going to want to have available, how you're going to want to spec them, what inspirations you're going to want to be using on these ships. Now, the distinction between heavy cruisers and light cruisers refers to gun caliber, but it's easy to kind of, a lot of people think, all right, a light cruiser is lightly armored. In this case, these cruisers should be pretty lightly armored as far as what I know about them. So they're having trouble protecting themselves against AP from cruisers. Even destroyers in certain situations can get citadel shots on these with the AP. Battleships are kind of in an interesting position. A lot of times when they shoot AP salvos at them, you're going to get most, if not all, overpens, unless the ship is angled in a certain way that those shells have enough time they encounter enough armor to arm, and then, before they detonate, they're still internally placed within the ship. So when you're shooting at these things in battleships, you can consider shooting HE at them, depending on the situation. Getting a full salvo of AP that translates into overpens isn't necessarily that bad. You're still getting roughly 1,000 damage per overpen with most battleship AP, at least at the higher tiers. So not, insignificant damage. But, countering these ships, we'll see more once they actually show up. I don't think they're going to be quite as problematic as some of these high-tier Russian HE type spamming ships, just again due to the commander setup that we have available, which allows those shells to do more damage. But we'll see. I mean, the Boise, the Atlanta, those of you that have these ships know they can be quite effective. It relies on good positional play and, unfortunately, in a lot of cases, good teamwork as well. So these will be dropping next update. I think that's 2 weeks, and of course we have the event commanders and ships that were already announced coming in that update. Then we're going to have these. We'll see what else is coming. We're probably going to get patch notes in about a week and a half or so. Of course, we'll be covering those when they come out on this channel, so stay tuned for that. But that's all the information we really know on these. I do want to get you guys' thoughts on these. Let me know if you're excited for the line, what your thoughts are. Commander's approaches to that. Have you guys started thinking about these at all? We've talked about on the stream. This is kind of a line that we've been expecting some time. When it was going to come, we have no idea until now, of course. But I've been kind of talking a lot about long-term strategic planning. You know, we'll have probably Japanese gunboats, you know, Italian cruisers, Pan-Asian destroyers. These are the lines on the PC that they have had for a while. French destroyers, of course. So all these are coming, and if you're into planning kind of your commander builds long-term, which sends a tingle up my leg, so I spent a little bit of time thinking about it, you got to kind of start thinking about, okay, where, you know, what kind of priority we're going to give to these builds. How early do we want to put points into them? If the lines aren't announced yet, doesn't make a lot of sense to start building up those builds too early. But it's not a bad idea to get at least a little bit of a start on them. So once these ships do start popping in, getting those commanders to the level you want them at isn't that big of a deal. So you're thinking Kincaid for these? You're thinking you're going to switch Norm Scott just to light cruisers? Or are you going to switch one or the other back and forth depending on which ship you're playing? What's your initial impression? What approach you're going to be going with? Let me know. And of course, we'll keep you updated with more information as it comes. And we'll be checking out the Exeter here potentially later today or else tomorrow. We'll get the ship review on that one. So that's going to do it for this one, guys. Hope you did enjoy it. If you did, please hit the thumbs up. New to the channel, consider subscribing. There's a lot of World of Warships coming all the time. Questions, comments, leave them below. I do love to hear from you guys. And we'll see y'all later. All right, peace.